Hello, Latina Professionals. This is Sammy Walker Herrera here for your executive public speaking session this Monday. We're doing things a little bit different today. You may be noticing if you've come to multiple sessions, whether you've only been to one or you've been to the other 5 presentations I've given, that I am standing instead of sitting. And that is to honor today's theme for public speaking strategies session, which is nonverbal influence, communicating through effective gestures. So definitely welcome again to Latina Professionals. Let us know if you have any questions throughout this session. Drop them in the chat so that I can address them and answer them even after this session as well. But while you're here, let us know, where are you joining from? What industry are you in, and what are you looking to learn today? Because regarding the sessions, you may never know who here in these sessions will be an integral part of your network. It could be myself. So if you haven't already, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And I know when you go to my profile, it's going to have that follow button. But if you go to the 3 dots, you can connect with me. Send me a message. Let me know that you want to connect, and I would be so happy to do so. But then you have other folks who may be in your industry who want to connect, who want to share their learnings from these sessions or their learnings from their experiences, whether they're currently a C-suite executive or aspiring to be so. So welcome again. You're absolutely in the right place. If you're here live or even watching the recording of Nonverbal Influence, Communicating Through Effective Gestures. So let us know. I'm already going to be seeing some comments in the chat here. It's always good to start the week connecting with y'all. And we're streaming live not only on LinkedIn, but also Latina Professionals YouTube and Latina Professionals Facebook page. So if you're not following those pages quite yet, definitely do so. Okay. Excellent. So glad to connect with so many of you again on our LinkedIn page as well. If you haven't let us know where you're joining from, your industry, what you're looking to learn for today, that's okay. You can share now. All right. Well, for today's session, thinking about communicating through effective gestures. Let me know what brought you here to this session. I know there are a number of professionals who come to me as a public speaking coach and say, I'm not moving my body whatsoever. I feel completely locked up. I feel super nervous. I think I'm just sweating. I'm showing my nervousness. I'm not giving eye contact. And it's a stressful situation for them. For other people, they're afraid that they're gesturing way too much. They're showing they're way too excited. People have given them feedback that they're moving around side to side, moving forward, or even the worst is when you're squeaking in your seat and you're sitting in your office chair, one of the bolts needs a bit of oil to it, and you're squeaking, and folks can hear that even when you're on Zoom. Even though Zoom has quite a bit of noise cancellation, it can be something that really sticks out as well. So let me know, are you someone who's gesturing, quote unquote, too much? Or are you someone who you feel locked up, you feel like you can't move, and that's impacting how you communicate with folks, whether virtually on Zoom or in person? All right, keep the comments coming in. There's definitely a mix of responses because we have so many diverse perspectives of folks who are here in this session as well. All right. Well, I want to introduce myself as we go along in the session. If you haven't already connected for one of these sessions, or you've been here many times, I still find it super helpful to make sure that you know who I am and you get a sense of why I'm communicating about communication today. So my name is Sammy Walker Herrera, and I am a confidence and public speaking coach. I help executive level leaders build long-term confidence through a committed speaking practice, expert feedback, and accountability. Now, this one sticks out for quite a lot of folks. You can learn public speaking on your own or in different groups dedicated toward public speaking, but sometimes it can be hard to build that self-motivation. And so I really help keep folks accountable to their goals, whether it's a New Year's resolution or they have an event coming up that they're terrified of messing up. They're terrified of talking on that stage and showing their expertise. I have personally coached 50 plus leaders to speak confidently in executive meetings, in high stakes interviews, and while gaining recognition for their work. And so this is something that I want to present to you as well. So we're talking about body language. We're talking about effective gestures, but the base for this concept is the idea of taking up space. And for many of y'all who attended my session on Fake It Till You Make It, who are drawn to these sessions because the focus is on confidence, there may be a lack of confidence that you feel regarding taking up space. That can be physical space, such as this. That can be the verbal space in the meeting. Just imagine a Zoom transcript of a meeting with 5 to 10 people and wondering, well, how much of that time should I be taking? And so I don't want to say you need this permission, but if it's helpful for you, I want to give you that permission that it is okay to take up space. It is okay to start practicing and getting used to building up that speaking muscle, whether it's sharing a comment that lasts for 30 seconds, whether it's asking a question to your team that lasts a minute or so, whether it's showing your expertise and following up with the team afterward in some way, or the team lead. I want to give you that permission. You don't need it from me, right? But if that's something you've been looking for, is that sense of, I just want to feel like it's okay to take up that space. It is okay to take up that space. And perhaps work is not where you start. Perhaps you start socially. Perhaps you start with your family. And perhaps you start with a coach to help you build that muscle and that confidence to speak up confidently at work. Excellent. Keep the comments rolling in if this resonates with you. Feel free to include in the comments, I commit to taking up space. I'll say that again. I commit to taking up space. And after this session, I'm going to comment on all y'all's comments and cheer you on because I completely believe that you do deserve to take up that space. Now, we're going to do a stretch assignment together. If you are able and you're interested, I encourage you to get up out of your seat and join me for taking up some physical space together. When I work with my clients, I ask them if their public speaking is mainly going to be on Zoom or virtual, or if it's going to be in person. But no matter what, I really encourage my clients to practice standing up because we're not as used to it, especially with more of a focus in hybrid as well as remote work. We're not as used to standing up and speaking, whether we're looking directly at a camera or if we're in person, perhaps behind a podium or on some type of stage or in a meeting room. So I encourage you again. Now, I know for some of you, you may be right in the middle of a workplace or you're at a watch party listening to this talk and you don't feel as comfortable. That is okay. But if you're on your own, you're confident, you're comfortable, you're able and you're interested, get on up from your computer chair, situate your camera, even though I can't see you, just so that you're used to it. And we're going to do a couple of stretches that I work with my clients on for them to get used to that concept of taking up space. So what we're going to do is we're going to move our hands forward right here. You see my hands right out here. We're going to move our hands and arms to the side. And you may be thinking, okay, well, the camera is not capturing her whole arms. Doesn't matter. We're taking up the space. We're going to move our hands up and reach as far as we can. Okay. And we're going to stretch back. So for me, I can touch the wall behind me. For you, you might touch the chair behind you or touch the air behind you, and that's okay. And so we're going to do that again. We'll maybe shake our arms out. Woo, get some blood flowing in there. And what we're going to do is forward again. Maybe see what the space in front of you is. To the side. I know when I go boxing, we do some of these arm rings. So like small arm rings and then big arm rings. All right. We're going to go up again. Feel free to stretch up. Wave your hands like you just don't care. All right. And then the last one is behind us again. And this one can be a little bit tricky for some folks. It might be a good stretch if you haven't stretched today. All right, we can shake it out one more time. We can even together take one breath in deeply and a breath out deeply. That's something that can really help regulate your nervous system, especially when you're trying things that are new to you. This stretch assignment is to really remember how much space you're really in. Even on Zoom, I can still gesture outside of this box. I can still think outside the box. I can still gesture above me. Maybe I'm talking about the sun's rays shining, and it's clear that it was a majestic moment for me based on this gesture. Often, when we're starting some gesture practice, we start here. We kind of create a box between our waist and our shoulders, and our gestures stay here around our face. Sometimes it gets to the point where our gestures are in front of our face to hide from people. Peekaboo. Sometimes we're using our body and our hands to hide. But when you remember that you have all this space to gesture, it's easy to remember that you are able to take up this space. You deserve to take up that space. So thank you for joining me for that stretch assignment. I hope it was fun for you. Let me know what it was like for you. Comment if it was awkward. Comment if it was comfortable. Comment if it was new or fun for you. I'd love to see what your reactions are. Okay. Now, one question I get all the time when I start talking about body language is, what is a good neutral position? I feel awkward. What should I gesture or not gesture when I'm either not speaking or I don't feel like there's a gesture that's natural to what I'm saying? So what you can do are two different positions that are pretty common and you might notice when you're watching different public speakers. And that would be arms by your side, perhaps your hands are toward your hips, or if you're on Zoom, you're recording virtually and you're not standing, perhaps your hands are in your lap. You don't have to feel like your hands have to be up and ready to gesture. You can raise them up when you're ready to gesture. So again, if you're standing, they can be to your side. And if you're sitting, they can be on your lap. Another neutral position that's pretty common for a lot of folks, I'll give myself as an example as well, is having the hands here clasped. Now, it's not like this intertwined. You see, I'm losing some of the blood from my fingers. And many folks do that when they're really nervous, is, hey, I'm not showing I'm nervous, but their hands are going like this. That's where some of that nervous energy is being expressed. So instead of intertwining your fingers like this, what you want to do is have one hand behind the other, and you can hold it pretty much like below your chest, around your belly button area. This is a common neutral position, and it's actually pretty convenient because you can see I can move my hand here, hands up, hands forward and down. So this is a pretty common neutral position, especially if you've seen any of the new Apple products coming out. You'll see that many of the speakers and employees from Apple are doing just this. Perhaps a bit too much, but it gives you a good space to remember, okay, this is what I can do to remember to do gestures because you still have your hands in the camera space. So let me know in the chat, which one feels more comfortable to you? Is it more down to the side? Is a comfortable neutral position, or more hands up here? Let me know because I want to see what feels most comfortable for y'all. What I want to share with you today regarding getting started with open gestures, open posture, is shining with solar. Now, let me know in the chat, have you ever heard of the solar framework? What I will let you know is that the solar framework comes from a therapeutic lens. It comes from a book, let me double check the name just so that I have it, called The Skilled Helper by Gerard Egan. And SOLAR is an acronym, so you have SOLER. And it helps you get a sense of how do you present your body in a way that's open and inviting to other folks. So if you're familiar with SOLAR, let me know in the chat. Again, we might have folks here who have a social work background, a counseling background, a psychology background, and you're very familiar with SOLAR. And I find that this framework is a really great start to getting used to opening the body for gestures. So let's get started. So when we're thinking about solar, so again, S-O-L-E-R, not A-R, we're going to start with that first S. And that first S stands for sitting squarely. Now, I also like to adapt it to standing squarely. So definitely include in the chat so that you remember. If you're not taking your notes, start taking some notes, but it stands for sitting or standing squarely. So you got a lot of S's there. So for the S for solar, if you're sitting, what you want to do is you want to position your seating toward the front of your chair. And the reason for this is it allows you a stronger posture. You're sitting up straight, you look alert, and actually when you're folding your body, when we're kind of hunched on our computer chairs, it actually impedes our ability to get a full lungs worth of air. But when you're standing straight and active, your deep breath can fill your entire lungs. And you can imagine how that helps regulate your nervous system when you take some deep breaths. So again, S stands for sitting or standing squarely. When you're standing squarely, what you want to do is you want to plant your feet. What I like to do is right foot down, left foot down, and balance your weight between your feet. I know sometimes when I'm standing casually, I'll balance more on my left side with my hip out. And that doesn't come across as confident. Additionally, I might start tapping my foot. I might start moving around, wiggling. So what I want to do is plant my feet up so that I feel planted and into the ground as well. This allows me a straight back posture and a lot easier to present myself as an active person in this conversation or talk. So again, S stands for standing or sitting squarely. So we have O. And what does O stand for, y'all? O stands for an open posture. Now, this is actually something I see quite a bit when it comes to LinkedIn photos, is most people feel, I need to look professional. And what I need to do to look professional is this, cross my arms. And there's actually data that shows from different websites that analyze likability, influence, power. There's a website called Photo Feeler that I've used to do this, that closing one's arms like this really brings down the percentage likelihood that people will consider you open. So when you're thinking about an open posture, what you want to do is, again, standing or sitting squarely, you want to push your shoulders back just a bit. And you want to refrain from closing yourself off by crossing your arms. You see, I'm already starting to hunch forward a bit while crossing my arms versus having my hands to the side, even gesturing like this, I'm able to have that open posture. So feel free to put in the comments open posture just to remind yourself for the O of solar. Now we have L. And what does L stand for? L stands for lean forwards. Now, lean forwards isn't this, looking directly into the camera, but it is the sense of if someone's asking you a question, if you're replying to someone, if you want to have your audience feel like they're in the know, that they're part of your community, leaning forward just a bit shows that you're fully engaged in the conversation and that you're fully listening. I also like to think of the L in solar as listening. And that's one of the most underrated skills for someone who's a strong public speaker, is being a great listener as well. So when you're leaning forward with that open posture, standing or sitting squarely, it's clear that you're really engaged in the present moment, which makes it a lot easier to balance all the thoughts in your head and be right there with the audience. Now we're going to go to E. We have E stands for eye contact. Now I know eye contact can differ quite a bit based on neurotype. It can also be different quite a bit from culture. But often, especially in United States culture, it's common to have that more direct eye contact as a way of showing attentiveness and a way of showing listening. So there's a couple of ways to show eye contact when you're presenting, whether it's on Zoom or in person. I'll take a quick sip of my matcha here. Let me know your preferred breakfast beverage of choice. Mine is matcha for sure. I get a little bit too amped with coffee, but I love a good decaf once a week or so. So we have the E, which is eye contact. If you're on Zoom or speaking virtually, your eye contact is not going to be where you are or where your audience is. It's going to be directly at the camera. And the way that you can encourage yourself to look at the camera is looking at the lights beside your webcam. Usually it's a red dot, might be some blue lines. You can also, and this is some of my clients' favorite, is put a sticky note with a smiley face right near or above your webcam. It makes it so much easier to remember, especially if the sticky note is your favorite color, especially if you had your child or a good friend of yours write the smiley face. So it reminds you of a positive memory. And it might encourage you to smile more as well if you feel like that's something that is missing from your public speaking repertoire. So if you don't mind, include in the chat what your favorite color is. And perhaps you can find a set of sticky notes that you can include on your webcam so you can have more of that eye contact. When it comes to in-person presentation, I feel like I can have my own full workshop on in-person presentation as well. But what you want to do is you want to scan the audience and give some eye contact for about 10 to 15 seconds per person, and then continue scanning the audience. That allows each person to know that you are regarding them. Now, what I'll say is you don't have to look at every single person, but you want to look at the areas of the room. And again, that's something I can talk about quite a bit more in a future session. And so if you're interested in more future sessions, definitely follow Latina Professionals and RSVP ahead for the sessions that I host here on Mondays. All right. So if you haven't included it in the chat already, E stands for that eye contact. Now, R is the last one. It's kind of encompassing and brings it all together. It stands for relaxed body language. If you're a person who already uses gestures, moving really fast or being really tight, looking like you're about to go boxing. I go boxing, so I'm already ready for my boxing stance. But if you already look like you're moving a bit too quickly, that may not present that relaxed sense for speaking. When you add standing or sitting squarely, when you stand, when you add that open posture, the leaning forward, the eye contact, making sure that you're presenting yourself in a slow, measured way helps people feel confident and comfortable with you. It's not only yourself that is a confident speaker, but are you building some of that confidence for your audience to ask you questions, to be approachable, to be someone that they see as an expert? So speaking in a relaxed manner helps you come off as someone who's talked about this topic so many times that it's very natural. You're perhaps maybe using some notes or some outlines. I do in my own presentations, but you're not depending on them. So you're able to give more of that eye contact. You're able to present and give gestures that are relevant, like listening gestures or speaking gestures as well. And so if you haven't included it in the chat, include the relaxed body language. And additionally, I want to know which part of solar was the most helpful for you. What was something that you learned that perhaps you had gotten advice differently on? Do you feel in this standing practice, as you've been practicing with me standing, whether again you're watching live or in a recording, that you feel differently about public speaking? Most communication really is nonverbal. Folks get a really strong sense about what we're talking about from how we're gesturing. Even if they, let's say, muted my talk, people would see that I'm invested in what I'm talking about, and then I'm perhaps teaching something as well. Here's my neutral gesture, also this neutral gesture as well. We're kind of refining a lot of the things that we've talked about here today. So again, thank you for listening a bit more about solar and this framework. It can be something that on a separate sticky note, you write out solar so that you remember these pieces and you practice one at a time. If you try to do all 5 parts of solar in one go and you're not as confident with each one of them, then it can feel like, oh my gosh, my body language is off, like I'm not a good public speaker. And that's not true at all. But we want to focus on one thing at a time. One thing at a time. If you recognize, you know what, my posture's been off for a while, then really focus on the S, the sitting and standing squarely. If you feel like eye contact is something that you don't regularly give the camera because you're not as used to it or because it makes you nervous, focus on that one first as well. And with that, that's exactly how I coach. I focus on the most impactful thing I find someone can use to really amplify their speaking and amplify their effectiveness when presenting to others. Because it's not just about delivery and being concise, but it's about the whole package and the impact of that speaking as well. And so I want to ask you, and let me know in the chat. I know there's a lot of times I host these presentations and I say, this is the next step. You should do this. You should do that. But I'm curious, especially if you've attended multiple sessions related to executive public speaking, what do you feel are your next steps? How do you want to get better? How do you want to integrate these lessons from public speaking that range from really owning your presence and knowing about executive presence, from speaking structure, from effective gestures? Are you planning on joining a Toastmasters group? Are you planning on practicing on your own with an AI tool? Are you planning on practicing with a friend or practicing in the mirror? Are you committed to standing up for some of your speaking as well? And are you ready to work with a coach who can help you really break down your own speaking strengths, as well as the things that you can improve on, so that you can really launch yourself as a strong, confident public speaker in record time? Let me know. What do you find are your next steps? What will help you feel comfortable? And perhaps what will help you leap just a bit out of your comfort zone? I want to leave this time open for Q&A. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing quite a number of comments. I believe there's something probably on my side with StreamYard, but I want to leave it open to any questions, any thoughts that you've had from this presentation. Drop them in the comments. I will be on LinkedIn answering your comments as well. And like I said at the start of this presentation, I want to connect with you. I want to have conversations. So we're not just connecting on Mondays, that we can connect other days of the week, and I can be a support to you as you understand how you want to build your executive presence and your confident speaking. So drop those comments, drop your questions in the chat, and I'll be sure to get to them as well. Especially if you tag me, that can be really helpful too. Now, join me next week for the topic, Amplify Your Message, the Art of Vocal Projection. Ironically, I've been considered someone who speaks a little too loud, but I do act a bit and I do improv. And so that enunciation, that speaking to the back of the room has become a lot more natural for me. And this is something I find can be helpful for anyone. If you feel like your voice is really quiet, you're not really projecting your voice, this is a great session for you. If you feel like maybe you're a little too loud, that's okay. How do we amplify your message? Because it's not just about the base volume, it's about how you vary your volume and you vary your tone as well. So I'm really excited to see y'all next week for the Art of Vocal Projection, and I'll include that link in the comments as well. If you're interested in working with a coach, specifically me, feel free to connect with me, especially if you feel like you struggle to feel and sound confident, or even visually look confident. Based on today's session, you recognize I'm a little bit locked up, or maybe I'm gesturing a bit too much. I know I've leaned a bit on the gesturing quite a bit section of that, and that's something that I've worked on quite a bit because I can coach myself, and that's something I like to teach my clients to do as well. If you haven't already, join the Latina Professionals community. We have different levels of membership where you can connect with even more professional development sessions and a community of fellow Latina professionals who are up-leveling their career. If you want to connect with me specifically, you can find me at sammy@speakyall.com, as well as speakyall.com itself, and connect with me here on LinkedIn. I'm looking forward to adding you to my network and all of us just further connecting past these sessions here on Monday. So they're an amazing start, but I want to make sure that we're really building those long-lasting relationships to develop so much more skills and confidence through the years. Alrighty, y'all. Thank you so much for your comments, for your questions, for your time, and I look forward to hearing from you. Alrighty, take care.